The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. When the Pharisees with some scribes who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus, they observed that some of his disciples ate their meals with unclean, that is, unwashed hands. For the Pharisees, and in fact all Jews, do not eat without carefully washing their hands, keeping the tradition of the elders. And on coming from the marketplace, they do not eat without purifying themselves. And there are many other things that they have traditionally observed, the purification of cups and jugs and kettles and beds. So the Pharisees and scribes questioned him, "Why do your disciples not follow the tradition of the elders, but instead eat a meal with unclean hands?" He responded, "Well did Isaiah prophesy about you hypocrites, as it is written, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines human precepts. You disregard God's commandment, but cling to human tradition.'" He summoned the crowd again and said to them, "Hear me, all of you, and understand. Nothing that enters one from outside can defile that person, but the things that come out from within are what defile. From within people, from their hearts, come evil thoughts, unchastity, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, licentiousness, envy, blasphemy, arrogance, folly. All of these evils come from within, and they defile." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
You've probably heard me pray often for the common good and the flourishing of the human person. Right? The two go hand in hand. Common good, we want what's good for everybody, and the flourishing of the human person. We hear a lot of common good stuff in our Gospels today. It's really beautiful and a hallmark of church teaching. And I think like St. James at the end of his second letter, he says, "Religion is pure and undefiled before God and the Father is this." This is what he says religion is: to take care of orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained by the world. Okay, so there's two dimensions, the common good and our own betterment, right? And I would even emphasize today that it's very crucial that we emphasize like our own flourishing in a healthy way in order to participate and take care of the common good, okay? So I would say like the best thing that you can do for me and for all of us is to be happy, right? Happy in its fullest sense. Like your happiness, your flourishing is good for all of us, okay? And that's a dynamic, but I emphasize that today. So what is happiness? What is authentic happiness, right? Reach back to the early guys, Plato, Aristotle, those guys. What would they say happiness is? They say the happy man on earth is the virtuous man. Virtue. Not hearing a lot about that in the media, are we today? What is virtue? Virtue is the firm and habitual disposition to choose the good. Firm and habitual disposition to choose the good, right? It's become second nature. When you have a virtue, it's not like I'm pulled in one direction or the other. I just naturally choose the good. Choosing the good is what ultimately makes us happy and makes us flourish, right? So we want that, and our like ideally our world and even our church especially creates an environment that helps us choose the good, right? So even like Moses in the first reading, he says, "Listen to these statutes and decrees which I am giving you today, that you may enter the land and take possession of it." So we need, as people, we need guidelines to help us to choose the good. Create an environment that we can flourish. So our country does that pretty well. At least its foundation helps us live in an environment where we can grow in virtue, flourish as human persons, and then that ends up being good for everybody, right? So our church does the same, for sure. And so she has guidelines and commandments and helps us to choose the good so that we can, be holy in a sense. Okay, so everything really that God's created is good, but it's how we use it. So virtue is the means that lies between two extremes, right? You can take anything, and food itself is very good and important for our just survival. We eat too much, it's not good. We don't eat at all, it's not good, right? It's the means that lies in the middle. That's a virtue, okay? The other one I think of is alcohol. Y'all know I like a beer every now and again, right? But you can take it too far, for sure. Like getting drunk is no good. In fact, it's a sin. It's a grave sin, mortal sin, the church would even say, because it leads to the things our very Lord says: adultery, greed, malice, deceit. We drink too much of that stuff comes out. And we don't have to drink any at all, but shunning it like it's evil in and of itself is a vice as well. So alcohol consumption in a good way can be good when it's used virtuously, okay, not getting drunk, for example. Okay, so that takes the virtue of prudence, you might say, or temperance, at least in that regard. But that's where the flourishing of the human person comes from, right? That's what I want to bring to our attention today, that it's important that we flourish in order to take care of each other, okay? And to do that, we really need to work on virtue. Virtue is the free man. It's the firm and habitual disposition to choose the good. That takes a little effort, right, on our part to grow in that. But ideally, our culture and our church helps ensure that by giving us guidelines, teachings that help us to kind of stay in the middle, right? So, hey, yeah, we definitely want the common good. To get to the common good, we need to be happy and holy, to flourish as human persons, and then that is good for the common good and the whole of society.